upon us. We're going to go ahead and begin our regularly scheduled city council meeting. So the date is September 16th, 2024. I'd like to welcome you all here this evening, joining us for this night. We will begin our meeting with an invocation offered by Reverend Nathaniel Hampton of Calvary Temple Church. If you'll please come forward. Thank you, sir, for being here. If everyone please stand for that invocation, and then if you'd please remain standing afterwards for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Lord Jesus, we want to thank you for this day that you've given us, for the blessings that you provided for us today. We know that you have all power and wisdom and that you care for each of us. We're grateful for that. We ask that you'd be here with this Caldwell City Council tonight and that you would guide every decision needing made in this meeting. I pray that you would grant wisdom to each person in this room and lead us in all that we do. We'll thank you for it and give you honor for all that you do in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much, Reverend, for being here. We appreciate your time and coming down and helping us to begin our meeting that way. Madam Clerk, if you please call the roll.
Doty?
Here.
Scotty?
Here.
Williams?
Here.
Allgood?
Here.
Dittenberg?
Here. Very good. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Are there any conflict of interest declarations from any members of the council regarding an item on the agenda this evening? Okay, so we do have a couple special presentations. So first is proclamation for Hispanic Heritage Month. Madi, I see you here. Do you mind coming to the microphone for just a minute and before I read this proclamation, just a quick synopsis of what is Hispanic Heritage Month, why it's so important?
Yes, of course. Well, Hispanic Heritage Month is, first of all, Madi Ramos, Idaho Hispanic Foundation. I think I know most of you. But anyway, Hispanic Heritage Month, it actually started as Hispanic Heritage Week. It was expanded to Hispanic Heritage Month because honestly, our Hispanic community is made up of a lot of different countries, so a lot of different Latin American and Spanish-speaking countries. And so it's a way to recognize and not just show that we are including our Hispanic community, but we're really welcoming our Hispanic community and recognizing the economic, educational, and all the different contributions that our Hispanic community brings to our cities, our communities, and our country. So, yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
you.
Appreciate you taking that time. So just go ahead and take a seat, and then I will read this proclamation. So again, this is a proclamation of Hispanic Heritage Month. Whereas each year, Americans observe National Hispanic Heritage Month by celebrating the histories, cultures, and countless contributions of Americans whose ancestors were indigenous to North America, including those from Mexico, the Caribbean, Central America, and South America. And whereas Hispanics have enriched and shaped our national character with traditions that span centuries, reflecting the multi-ethnic and multicultural customs of their communities. Sure what that was, while bringing their own distinct and dynamic perspectives to the story of our country. And whereas since the United States first celebrated National Hispanic Heritage Week 56 years ago under President Lyndon Johnson, Hispanics have become an integral and thriving part of our diverse community. And whereas this month's theme, Pioneers of Change, Shaping the Future Together, reminds us of how our Hispanic community continues to shape our nation as business owners, artists, public servants, and members of the U.S. military. Latinas and Latinos remain strong leaders and change makers. And whereas Hispanics continue to make significant and diverse contributions to the cultural, educational, economic, and political vitality of the city of Caldwell. Now therefore, I, Jerem Wagoner, as Mayor of Caldwell, Idaho, do hereby proclaim September 15th through October 15th, 2024 as Hispanic Heritage Month in Caldwell, Idaho, and encourage all residents to honor the rich diversity of the Hispanic community and celebrate the many ways the Hispanic community contributes to our nation and society. So true pleasure for me to be able to do that. I know I had the privilege to be with you, Mari, on Friday, and the great Mexican consulate that we have here, Ricardo Higuera, the great work that he is doing. It truly was an honor for me to be there with you all and to celebrate the beginning of this. And September 15th, yesterday, was the Dia de Independencia, Independence Day for Mexico. So a great time to celebrate that and to celebrate all the Latinos and the Hispanics that live in our community. So thank you so much. Appreciate you being here. Mind if we do a quick picture, Mari, up here in front? Thank you again. It is great to be able to celebrate that and have you here, and it's great to get to see you a couple times in the same week, so that's always a pleasure and a treat for me. Our next special presentation is an annual update report from TVCC regarding the TVCC Caldwell campus. Kind of unique. This is the first time we've done these many times, but the first time that we've done it here in your building. And so we really, before President Young comes up, just want to express appreciation to TVCC, to President Young. I had the chance to meet with her and Anne-Marie. Is that right? Did I get it right? So we met recently and kind of talked about, where we're at, making sure everything's still working together nicely, which it is, and we just appreciate that partnership with TVCC in that regard. So thank you for being here this evening. It's great to see you again. And if you don't, you or whoever you'd like to come forward and make that report, that would be fantastic.
Well, good evening. For the record, my name is Dr. Dana Young, and I'm the president of Treasure Valley Community College. And it is my pleasure to be here this evening and to be able to share the annual report. So Mayor Wagner and members of the council, I have a few people to introduce to you, and then our Vice President of Academic Affairs will come forward and share the PowerPoint presentation with you. So first, I wanted to introduce Julie Lynch. Julie, if you would stand. Julie has served as our interim director of the Caldwell Center for the past 2 years, and I just wanted to express my appreciation for her and everything that she has done. She has worked with all of you through the transition and the move, and I just appreciate everything that she has done. And then I would like to introduce our new director of the Caldwell Center, Angelina Rom. Angelina. And Angelina has just started in this new role, and she is excited. She has worked here for how many years, Angelina? 4.5 years she has worked here at the Caldwell Center, and so she knows it well, and she's looking forward to the next phase and the next generation of TVCC here in Caldwell. I also would like to introduce our Director of Legal and Human Resources, Anne-Marie Kelso. Anne-Marie has been with the college since 2016, and she has worked very closely with Jerem and with everybody to get the MOU in place and to make sure that all the pieces and parts flowed evenly. So we really appreciate her. And last but certainly not least, our Vice President of Academic Affairs, Sandy Porter. And Sandy, if you'd like to come forward. Sandy is going to walk you through and just share the numbers and talk a little bit about the programs that we're offering here, and we will stand for questions after she does the presentation. So, Sandy.
Thank you. Mayor Wagner, members of the City Council. I'm Sandy Porter, and I am the Vice President of Academic Affairs at Treasure Valley Community College. I have been at TVCC for about the last 16 years. My background is really in ag education, so I taught in the ag faculty for the last 15 years and decided I wanted a little change of pace, and this has been a new opportunity, and I have enjoyed it so far. We were discussing in our ride over that it's been officially a year, and I've survived it, so that's been a good point. A quick point of clarification, Angelina has graciously agreed to be our interim director of our Caldwell Center. We did some discussions over that over the summer, and she gave me the big eyes, so we're trying to make sure we use that interim title as we get her established in her new position. We have a quick update for you in relation to our enrollment in, is this mine? What's that?
Something just happened.
Man, this is not good. Can you go to the next slide? Thanks. When we look at this, our enrollment, I think one of the most obvious things that we've seen a lot of changes, right, on our campus as we share this building and kind of recalibrate our offerings. But you'll see our enrollment for the 23-24 year. What you'll see is summer is relatively low. Students in our area tend to work in the summer, right? And our highest enrollments are always in the fall. So when we compare those numbers, our space is significantly smaller, but we are adjusting quite well, I think, to the third floor and making sure those offerings are continuing for our Caldwell-based students. Next slide, please. When we look at this, our Caldwell enrollment, I think it's important for us to look at our students and the kind of courses that we take. We have some students that are just based in Caldwell, and all of their educational options are in here. Some of them come to Ontario to take a lab or some portion of their education. Some take online classes. And so when we see those comparisons year to year, as we have changed our offerings, our students have adjusted and are taking different modalities for their courses. Next slide. As we have changed, we are really dedicated to the 4 programs. Aviation, our helicopter program, is probably our staple kind of anchor point, which Julie and Angelina basically run for us. Addiction studies, we see that that's a program that we're going to continue to grow in both of our communities of which we have campuses. Cybersecurity and computer information systems, largely online, but it is a growing need in our valley on both sides of the river, so we will continue to develop that. And then we have a plumbing apprenticeship program that's based in this campus. So with that, I'd stand for any questions if you have them.
Perfect, thank you so much. Questions, Councilor Stoddard?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, no better reason than a selfish one. Are you doing anything with food processing?
We are working on that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it is, in this area, we would be remiss if we didn't. We do have a program on the other side, but I think there's an opportunity to partner here. So if you have suggestions or partnerships for us to pursue, we're very interested.
Are you working with Simplot at all? Or-
We do work with Simplot, yeah.
Okay.
Our industrial manufacturing faculty member has taught quite a few classes for Simplot and has been part of their continuing education program there, but it's something we're always wanting to explore. So,
Good, thank you.
yeah, absolutely.
Perfect, excellent. I don't see any others, so again, just thank you so much for taking the time. I actually was just emailing you about an hour ago, so I don't know if you've seen them or not, when I was upstairs preparing for this meeting, so didn't realize I was going to be able to see you tonight. So, but yes, thank you again for everything. Great neighbors up there. Appreciate all that you do and allowing us to be here. Without you and your cooperation, we would not be here in this room tonight, so thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. That's all our special presentations. I don't think we have any, or do we? So we do have one individual signed up for audience participation, Mr. David Moore. Oh, sorry, and Lee, you're on there too. So we'll go to David first, and then we'll jump back to you, Lee. So.
Good evening, David Moore, 711 East Denver. Just here to say thank you on behalf of the Caldwell Alliance for that cover that Caldwell Housing Authority so graciously gave us a nice help break to put that up. I call that park the land that time forgot. spent a lot of time down there as a kid, and it's looking better and better and better. So I appreciate that. Thank you, the city. And we had an event down there the other night. We had people show up, so it's got life to it. It just needs a little bit more as we inch towards. So thank you guys very much.
Yeah, appreciate that, David. Thank you so much for recognizing that. And we'll have another one here in the near future, an actual ribbon cutting, celebrate that. So that was, kind of a culmination of efforts to be able to get that started. And again, this is just the start. CHA, as mentioned, has been a big part of that. Really appreciate their partnership. We've got to give a huge shout out to R&M Steel, Nancy and Robert Roberts, and their donation of that shade structure. They do so much for this community, and so it's a huge thank you to them that we were really able to make the money we have stretch even further because of that. So it started with, I was actually able to participate in a Blue Cross of Idaho Foundation grant program. And going through that, the city was able to receive $20,000 in grant money from them. We were able to add that to with the council's approval. If you remember from Republic Services, every year we get a little bit of money back from them, and that was around $39,000 last year. The council agreed to put that money towards Lions Park in conjunction with that $20,000. So we were able to add all that together and really do some great things. And again, this is just the start. There's some barbecue grills to be installed here in the next week or two, some new basketball hoops, some outdoor exercise equipment, and that's just the beginning. There's more on that to come in that regard. Sounds like maybe David has a few other things to add.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, and thank you, Arnhem Steel and everybody that's contributed down there. I did leave out one thing. We do have a funding mechanism that's going to help maintain that park as long as I'm alive. So we're going to figure that out, and that's going to help take some pressure off of the city parks and rec and everybody else down there. So we're all bought in. So thank you guys again very much. Thank you, everybody.
That's awesome. Thank you for that additional info. I appreciate that. So, yeah, it's very exciting. I think, ever since Fifth Avenue, the stoplight got removed on the freeway, it kind of just, as mentioned at the time, the land forgot. And so we're excited to shine a light back down on there and continue to make that a great place. And we'll let the council know for sure when we look at doing that ribbon cutting down there and really celebrating everything that's going on at Lions Park. So, okay, Mr. Genke, Lee, if you please come forward. If you can limit your comments to 3 minutes or less.
Yeah, no, I'll do that. So thanks for having me, guys, tonight. I want to talk about, an upcoming thing that you guys have on your agenda today with the Solstice Park. So I'm developing, a 26-acre subdivision, 100 lots on Eustick Lake. As a part of that component, we have a 3.5-acre park that is fully developed that we'd like to give to the city. We've received a little bit of an objection from this about this gift, which is worth about $1 million, a little over $1 million. And the objection has been that there's not a bathroom on it and there's not enough parking. I'm here to say, hey guys, this park is the only park on this part of town. This park is in the center of 535 approved housing units. It kind of baffles me as to why, there's even any kind of conversation as to why this gift isn't being received. So I guess I'd encourage you all, just think about this gift today. I'm trying to do the right thing as a developer, and yes, I get a tax deduction from this, but really this is about supporting this community, and showing that I can do the right thing and that this development community can do the right thing. So I'm offering you guys 3.5 acres with a pickleball court, a basketball court, an under 12 soccer field, and access to over 1 mile of walking paths. So just encourage you all to think about that today. Second thing is wanted to offer an attaboy to Robin and Haley. Thank you for your help on the Chicago and Fifth project. We're getting there. We still have a little bit of work to do. You got to figure out some offsites and all that stuff. But, thank you both. So, thanks.
Good. Well, if we may kind of jump ahead, if this is all right, Madam Geyer. I know we were going to discuss this later in the mayor's comments, but should we just tackle it right now? What do you think, Rob?
It's not an action item.
It's not an action item, so,
Yeah.
since we're already talking about it, might as well. Is that good? Okay. Very good. So this was going to be at the end of the mayor's comments, we're going to talk about this property, but like I said, since it's already on the minds and at the forefront, might as well just keep going with it. So, and maybe Mr. McDonald might be able to leave early then that way too.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm happy to be here. I wasn't expecting to present this early, and I didn't know it was going to come up this early, but I'm certainly happy to. We've met with Lee a few times, and he has proposed to dedicate a portion of their development to the city as a park. What you're seeing here is the location of the development. The Solstice development is on the south side of Ustick Road, immediately to the west of the Wilson Drain, which is just a little bit west of Lake Avenue. And you can see kind of the site layout here in this exhibit, and where the park is located about in the middle of the development. The park, as Lee had mentioned, is about what is proposed, my understanding, is about 3.7 acres. Does that sound right? And some of the amenities that he had mentioned are pickleball, basketball, and some green open space, and those are some things, and there may be some flexibility there if we wanted something different, but that's what's proposed. We go to next. So this is a site plan, again, of the site, and then on the right side, you can see the area in red that is proposed to be dedicated to the city. It includes the park area, and then there's a long area of pathway that runs up and down the Lowline Canal, which is a pioneer irrigation canal that basically goes all the way up to Ustick Road and then crosses Ustick Road. And so that's what the dedication proposal is. Now, as we've looked at this, I have met with a few staff members, Ms. Collins from Planning and Zoning, and then also the Parks Superintendent, Mr. McDonald. And we've had some discussions about this. And I just wanted to point out some of the pros and cons so that council has an understanding of what some of our discussion included. So if you want to go to the next slide. So there's definitely pros to this. The city's receiving additional acreage of parkland, which is something that we're not currently actively developing until we get some of the new parks online. This park is about a half a mile east of Brothers Park, so it's not terribly far from Brothers Park, but Mr. Genke is correct. We don't have any parks over in this area, at least public parks. The developer is proposing to construct amenities, basically build out the entire park minus a restroom and a parking lot, which are two items that are necessary for a city park to be used by the public. And then, like we had mentioned before, there are some amenities, pickleball, basketball, and green space. Some of the downsides that we had identified were the park is in the middle of a subdivision. It is not easy to see from Ustick Road, and so there would be a lot of public passerbys on Ustick Road that may not know the park is even there. The Lowline Canal pathway portion is a canal, and canals tend to not look good, and they're very difficult to maintain. And so I would have concerns giving this entire canal length to the Parks Department and telling them now that this is their obligation to maintain. The additional park maintenance, there would be additional park maintenance, and Mr. McDonald in the Parks Department had indicated to me that this would necessitate at least one additional employee to be able to maintain this park. The subdivision has a storm drain retention facility that is in the park. It is a drain field that is in the park under the grass area, and so that is a little bit unusual. We'd have to have an easement or something to make sure the subdivision knows they're still obligated to maintain that, even though it's within the city park area. And then the last item is that the maintenance, that normally this park would be built as a private park and the HOA would pay for the maintenance, but by the city taking it over, the general fund is paying for the maintenance of this park. So those were some of the downsides that we saw. If you would go to the last slide. So the recommendation, and please keep in mind, we are open to any suggestions or alterations. This is just the recommendation that we had come up with. The city staff, the dedication of the park is acceptable under these conditions. The city staff, we don't feel like we should be dedicating or receiving the canal portion that is being proposed, and that is because of the maintenance that is associated with that. The large area, there should be a large visible public park sign that's placed on Ustick Road so that people driving by know that there is a park and you have to meander through this subdivision to get to that park. And that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be built by the developer. It just means that we have to have a place up in the front where we could put a sign. The general commitment from the city council, we would probably need some kind of general commitment from council that we would be able to add another parks position. And there was discussion, sorry, I apologize. Can you go back a couple slides? So if you look at the site plan, there's an area up there at the very top that was designated for some commercial. And the proposal from the developer was that they would dedicate or also provide that to the city for parking in exchange for maybe a land exchange or something else by the city. In our view, we don't feel like putting parking up at that location is very beneficial to where the park is located. Even though people could use the pathway to get to the park, most people are going to want to just drive directly to the park. And so what we would propose instead is to build a small parking lot in the park area and a restroom in the park area so people can drive directly to the park to access the park. Those would be our recommendations as staff. With that, I am happy to answer any questions that council has and elaborate if needed.
Great. And again, this is just a discussion item, so obviously
Correct.
no action will be taken tonight. This is just to kind of receive thoughts from the city council, input, if you think this is something worth pursuing, if you have other concerns to address, or you feel it's just too much of a burden on the city. So really open up for discussion from the council. Councilor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this is just some thoughts as we're thinking through this. I'm assuming this is more than what the general green space requirement would be for a subdivision, Robin, or where are we at? This seems like a lot of green space. If this was just a subdivision that we were requiring and they had to have green space, what would that equal? I mean, this looks like more than what we would expect to see in a subdivision this size.
Mayor and Councilor Williams, I would have to go back and look at this project to see if they have exceeded the requirements for their open space based on the project being a planned unit development. There might have been some trade-offs for additional open space or something, so we'd have to go back and look at that.
Okay. I just think we need to be very judicious about how we handle this, because I wouldn't want to discourage other developers from maybe doing something similar. You know, we've encouraged other developers to donate land for other purposes. Seeing our fire department here, thinking of fire station number 4 is one example. We need to look carefully at this. This is over $1 million commitment to the city just in the gift, whether it's tax deductible or not. That's money our taxpayers don't have to pay to buy another city park, and in a city where we're looking to expand our parks. And then I'm surprised a little bit, and it's just me commenting that 3 more acres is going to require a whole nother employee. I'm sure our parks staff is already stretched to the limit, but I don't know that we'd hire somebody just to take care of 3 acres. And then so there's a lot of other questions that come up, but I would say we need to be very careful and judicious about moving ahead with this. Maybe, I wouldn't want to send the signal that we don't want to park, just do your because an open space in a PUD doesn't require a bathroom. So if we just said to the developer, just do like everybody does, the city would be out a public park and some other benefits to us. And so I'm concerned that we might be looking to gift horse in the mouth here to some degree.
Thank you. Councilor Allgood.
Yeah, Rob, just off the top of your head, when we build a public restroom in a park, do you have any idea what it costs to construct one of those?
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, Councilman Allgood, the last restroom I think that we constructed was probably in the ballpark of $250,000, and I think that was probably at the Veterans Garden or Lions Park. Those are probably the 2 most recent, and they're not cheap.
Okay. Thank you.
How much would the parking lot be, just to go along with what Councilor Allgood was asking? Do you have an estimate on
Mr.
that?
Mayor, that's a good question. The parking lot, it depends on the size, and I don't know that we need a huge parking lot. I mean, you may be fine with 10 stalls or less, possibly. I haven't really looked at that. It's hard to say. I could certainly put some numbers together if you'd like me to. I hesitate to put a number on the record. I know restrooms, because we've done those recently, but every parking lot's different.
Okay, yeah. Counselor Doty?
Thank you. Couple of things. There's an easement, or we need an easement underneath the land. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, or what's going on underneath the land?
Yeah, and Mr. Genke can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that there is a storm drain facility on that park that they are proposing to retain the water from the site, from the development in storm drain events, storm events. And so that's underground, and it's basically like a big drain field, and that is in the park area. And so if the city was going to receive dedication of that park area, we would have to have an easement there with the adjacent development and the HOA, so that they know that if something goes wrong with that storm drain facility, they are still responsible to maintain it.
I guess I would say that, we're totally fine with providing that easement, totally fine with having the HOA continue to maintain that. I guess, the one thing to think about.
He needs to be on the
Lee,
record.
do you mind, we need to get you, can you come to the microphone?
Yeah, he needs to be on the record. Thank you.
I guess we're totally fine with providing the easement and maintaining the stormwater facilities that live underneath there. I guess we just look at this as a recreational opportunity and the surface thing, the surface activities that happen. But the HOA would continue to maintain everything underneath there. The other comment I would say about the location of this park would sit right in the middle of your Wilson plan, or the Wilson Drain, pathway plan. That was a part of the 2040 plan that you guys wrote. So, this is an opportunity to put a restroom right in the middle of a pathway that you guys have designated as an essential park, as an essential pathway. So, anyway, that's an aside. But again, my commitment is we will continue to maintain any stormwater facilities.
Mr. Mayor, just one follow-up then. And then when Robin's checking the green space, just make sure that putting a bathroom in a parking lot doesn't go below the required amount of green space. I think it's worth continuing the conversation about. Clearly, I need to find out and research this a little bit more, but I don't think we should end the conversation today. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Counselor Dittenber?
You'll have to bear with my voice. I'm not sure I can talk very long, but I want to express my appreciation for Mr. Ginke for offering this. This type of cooperation goes a long way. I want to try to recall something that I think I may know from my time working with the Boise Police Department way back in 1994 and 95. I think the city of Boise took possession of 8 neighborhood parks, and by the time I left the police department, they gave 8 neighborhood parks back to the neighborhoods, because the neighborhoods really thought they were their parks. They didn't want people, while they're sitting in their hot tub at night, walking through, playing frisbee golf and taking their dogs for a walk. So it's just something to be aware of, that these things have been tried in the past and may have been received with a measure of success and unsuccess. But nonetheless, I think we do keep the conversation going.
Okay, any other comments or suggestions? Okay, very good. So it sounds like we'll do some more homework with planning and zoning and get some more of those numbers back and bring this back to council in the future for some further discussion. So, okay. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it. And thank you again, Mr. Genke, for bringing that forward and the opportunity to have that discussion. So, okay, so that moves us into consent calendar. I believe we have a few amendments to our agenda this evening.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Doty.
make a motion to amend the consent calendar. Move the following items to new business for further discussion. Item number 8, number 9, and number 23. These items will now be listed as new business 5A, 5B, and 5C.
Perfect. Do we have a second?
Second.
So it's a motion from Councilor Doty and almost a three-way tie, but we'll give it to Williams. Okay, a second from Councilor Williams for approval. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Doty.
was there more on here, Debbie, I need to
Yeah,
do? I need to make another motion.
Old business.
Okay.
Include that.
One more motion.
Yes.
Yes.
Remove item number 2 as requested by the city attorney. And then amend new business, remove item number 5 as requested by you, Mayor Wagner.
Okay, very good. So we have another motion for removal, or for the amendments as described. Do we have a second? Councilor Williams seconded that one, all by himself. There was no tie in this case, so sole winner for the second. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that motion passes as well. So we do have the agenda amended as approved. So with that, we do have the consent calendar as amended before the council for your motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Doty,
I move that we approve the consent calendar as amended.
do we have a second?
Second.
It's a motion from Councilor Doty and a second from Councilor Allgood for approval of the consent calendar as amended. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, with that, the voting is open at this time. All votes have been cast for council members present, and so voting is closed. And that passes unanimously, and the amended consent calendar is approved. That moves us into old business. So this first one is, again, just a discussion item. And as we are moving towards a hopeful action item at the next, our plan is to have an action item at the next council meeting. So really do want to have some meaningful discussion tonight. We appreciate our front row here, these wonderful firefighters that are here with us on that. So they are here for your discussion and questions regarding the relocation of station number 1. But it is imperative that we do start moving forward with a site location. The clock is ticking in regards to the dollars being spent for the bond that was approved in that regard. So we are open to very serious discussion and questions, and don't hold back. So if you have concerns or questions on anything, please let it be heard tonight so we can discuss it and hopefully come back with an action item at the next council meeting. So with that, Chief Daniels, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Brian Daniels, Deputy Chief Administration for Caldwell Fire. Here tonight to discuss further efforts on relocation of Station 1. And while we recognize as the fire department that the unanimous decision was made 2 weeks ago pending soil analysis, we also recognize the city council and the mayor's decision to keep the fire station downtown to maintain those adequate response times, proper coverage, and a presence in downtown. But first, before we get into the soil analysis, I'd like to go back to the previous meeting from a couple of weeks ago. There were some terms, I think, discussed, and I don't know if there's some confusion or not, but we talked about value and dollars and in relation to the use of taxpayer dollars. So the city of Caldwell already owns all of the lots that we've discussed, and those lots include the current fire station lot, Blaine Street, as well as the Chicago property. So there are no real estate transactions that are going to take place as far as the city purchasing property. The city already owns those lots. The city hall compound, which we feel is, well, it is a relatively modern development that was built on in the 70s. It not only aligns with our goals of maintaining that downtown presence and our required response times, but gives us that coverage for the downtown corridor that we've talked about. It also is our opinion that it's the most cost-effective solution, as we've said in the past. So just to recap some of the hard costs that we expect to spend out of the bond dollars. To move to City Hall, the former City Hall site, demolition and site improvement costs are $725,000. To move to the Chicago site would be $650,000 to $734,000. The cost at the Chicago site would involve grading, infill, and infrastructure, and that includes site prep, grading, infill, basically taking dirt out, putting dirt back in, compacting it, bringing in infrastructure like power, water, sewer, communications, natural gas, and stormwater drainage. It is also in a higher classification flood zone, so there's certain special circumstances that go with that land. For the Fire Station 1 location that we discussed, where personnel are currently occupying, that price, again, that we expect to spend out of the bond dollars is $920,000, and that includes demolition, site improvements, and temporary facilities. It does not include the required remediation for Indian Creek that we discussed or a couple of weeks ago regarding the entombment structures. With the choice of the Chicago site, excuse me, correction. With the choice of the City Hall site, the fire department expects to refund impact fees of around $518,000, which could be used to offset some costs for Fire Station 4. Again, that's if we choose to go, if the council sticks with the decision of a couple of weeks ago, maintaining our presence in downtown and maintaining that site at the old City Hall. We basically can refund the fire department impact fees over $500,000. So regarding the soil conditions, in your packet, I included a letter, a summary letter, and we sought guidance from various partners to further solidify your decision that was made a couple of weeks ago. A preliminary examination yielded no concerns for us. There are no reported or historical contamination references at the former City Hall compound site. That initial analysis involved a desktop review, a Department of Environmental Quality historical site study, as well as a review using Teradex, which I referred to in that letter in your packet. And Teradex serves as a clearinghouse for all of this information. Based on the findings and information provided by Terracon, who is a contractor that's done work for the city in the past, and Ms. Newbury from the city's Public Works Department, the fire department is now seeking final approval to move forward with the next phases in designing, construction planning, and direction to proceed with the former City Hall compound site, or to move forward with what we're calling is discretionary soil analysis at the direction of the council and the mayor. That is all I have. I stand for questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Councilor Doty.
Hi. Thanks for showing up tonight. How are you?
Good, sir. How are you?
It was me that began to have some concerns. I don't mind admitting it. A couple of questions, of course. The refund of impact fees for City Hall of $518,000. If we can use that for City Hall, could we not use that for Chicago or another location? Why is it only specific to the City Hall location?
We can't really use the impact fees for anything other than a new service that is provided to the city. So impact fees only accommodate growth. Being that the property off of Belmont was secured with impact fee dollars, if we're not going to occupy that space, the water department has voiced interest in taking that property from us for the price that we paid for it. If we don't go to the Chicago site, we wouldn't use that land, and those dollars would be refunded back to the impact fund or impact fee fund.
So, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
So the Chicago site has already received the money, basically, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Of the impact fee money, okay. And I think some of the confusion is, I was reading a slide after I left here, and that might be some of the confusion. One of the slides showed going to the old City Hall was like a $2 million, I'm guessing you don't have the slides here tonight.
I do not.
And that might be some of the confusion, is one of the slides showed that it was like $2 million for the City Hall location, and the other ones were about $1 million. And so, I guess what was wrong with that slide might be a simple way to put it.
There was a lot of data on those slides, and the fire department is not discounting the fact that there is value in that land. The city already owns that land, though. And so, we were trying to find a way to articulate that in some form or fashion, we would be able to maybe compensate the city for that site selection, but I think we're past that. Where we're really at is the city owns all the property. We put those dollar figures based on the value of the dirt, essentially. And knowing now that we don't have to pay the city for the real estate transaction, and we also don't expect to receive dollars for our current fire station, we just put a dollar amount based on value.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So if you don't have to pay the city for that, I think you're spot on with what I'm talking about, though, is the economic impact of putting it there, right? So we have to be looking at downtown. There's only so much land downtown.
This is true.
Not that we clearly support our fire department here. I think we've made that pretty clear with this council. But looking at the financial impact or the economic impact of using that land for a fire station versus some other business that is a tax-paying entity that may come in when we have other land choices to move it to. So you do have to add that value onto there, right?
We do, and we captured that sentiment, I believe, with the value. Chief Shoup can speak to the operational impacts, delayed response times, or increased response times, I should say, routes of travel from the Chicago site, the items that we've discussed repeatedly to the council regarding the site selection at Chicago, and I don't know if you can actually offset the value of the land for economic development in sacrificing, public safety, increased response times, or what we're here to do is protect the core of downtown Caldwell.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please.
However, the core of downtown Caldwell, meaning the business districts, are sprinklered, right, versus the houses that are out in that area. And if we continue to develop out that way, maybe an amphitheater or something of that nature, there's going to be many more structures out there also that will need to be protected at some point in the future. Chief, did you happen to go out and take a look at the parking, now that the meters are gone, the parking lot across the tracks? Can you give me some information on that?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Doty, as part of our ongoing review of alternate locations, we did look at the parking lot that is located off of Kimball and Albany, which is currently a city parking lot that's paved. There's a cell tower located on that site. We conducted some analysis, and ironically enough, as part of the analysis that we conducted for the current old City Hall footprint, we also did a data search for that parking lot, and there are some challenges underneath that lot. So one of the challenges that we noticed is a tank, possibly two tanks underneath that lot that would propose some significant issues, potentially some significant issues.
Sure, and clearly I was unaware of the tanks, but that's exactly why we needed to check it out, right, to see if there are some tanks under there. So I guess the real question that I have is the economic impact and what maybe other councilors may think about that. Because once the land's, this fire station is going to be there for a long time, and I guess I just want council to consider that before making a final determination. If in the end, the council, based on this discussion, ends up going with City Hall, then great, let's move forward, but just understanding the economic impact. In addition to, I get that the funds almost work out the same by going to Chicago. However, it's really, what do we want our downtown to look like, and what is our plan for downtown? So that's all I have.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so much. Councilor Stoddard?
Mr. Mayor, I agree with Mr. Doty's analysis. I think that property that's there for the current fire station does have more value than the one out in Chicago. And the other thing you have to consider too is collecting taxes on that property would be just about forever versus the other site. So it's a very good economic impact, I think. So, and for our consideration.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
if I can
please.
respond, Councilmember Stoddard, I can definitely appreciate your perspective and Councilmember Doty's perspective on the economic value. The one thing that I would kind of respond with are the points that are beyond the fiscal impact that would be part of that ownership of downtown. And my specific example that I use is the pancake fundraiser this past Saturday off of Indian Creek Plaza. Great location. It's a great partnership that exists between the fire department and Destination Caldwell and Indian Creek. We want to be infused into everything that's happening downtown. And I believe that a facility that's built downtown, a new station in the old City Hall lot, will strengthen that partnership, because as Indian Creek grows and that Paseo grows around Indian Creek, we can have that pancake feed on the apparatus bay of that new station. And I think it could offer more and more of a hometown feel and strengthen that connection.
Just one follow-up, Mr.
Give
Mayor.
1 second. So,
Oh,
Councilor,
is that right?
all good, and we'll come back over
Couldn't see
there.
it down there. Sorry, Chris.
And Chief, you just hit on my question, really. I was just going to kind of ask you to place some value, some neighborhood value, on your perspective of having it downtown in the core next to City Hall, next to the police department, fire department there, and what you see as neighborhood value for having it downtown.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Allgood, thank you for that question. It definitely supports the mission that we've been on for the last 2 years to create this increasing bond between the fire department and its community, tearing down silos and getting our folks out into the community to do the heat emergency events with our fire engines, the water fights in Indian Creek, the pancake feeds. Any opportunity we can, we're educating our community, and we're building a strong partnership so everybody in the community knows that we're here to serve, and it's beyond the perspective of just sitting in a firehouse and waiting for calls. We're engaged in being part of that community. Now, that's kind of soft skill stuff, but there is also a response component that is important when we look at responses in this downtown core area. Because unfortunately, not all of our buildings have sprinklers, and some of the commercial structures that exist here in the downtown area, the faster you can get on scene, the better that outcome's going to be. Additionally, as we develop down along the boulevard, as that industry comes in, having that closer footprint will also mean that we can get down there faster.
Councilor Doty?
Just a couple more things. Will all of that land be used on, just to recap, at City Hall, there won't be any public parking available there, right?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Doty, the current plan we have is that footprint will be just for the station admin, and there will be a training room, an EOC. So there will be some parking that we're going to assign there that will be for any community training that we conduct in that community room.
Sure. And Mr. Mayor, also, as we build there, though, we also have to consider Fire Station 1, then, that would ultimately be probably torn down or purchased, or if the city, and this is what I'm talking about, a plan, if we're going to make that parking, because we have that nice temporary parking right on Main Street, and that's very valuable land, too, and at some point, something will need to be built there, and it won't be parking. So if it's going to go where Fire Station 1 is, then you lose out on both of those economic opportunities. And again, I'll support whatever direction council wants to go. I just want you to know that we're not going to gain any ground here if we keep it there from an economic standpoint. Clearly from a community standpoint, no doubt. Clearly to benefit our firefighters to be downtown, absolutely. I just, when we make the decision, we're not going to gain from either of those properties is all I want brought to light. So, thank you.
Councilor Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly before I ask a couple, how did the tug of war go? Oh, no, sorry. Back to the matter at hand here.
You win some, you lose some.
My initial concern really was piqued in the fact that we were looking at those numbers from before, and it appeared as though this was going to be $1 million difference out of pocket to the city. And so in my mind, coming into this meeting, I was thinking, wait a minute, if we were going to spend $1 million less of that bond to build out on Chicago, we need to revisit this. So my first question, or I would ask for clarification, is would there be a bond savings to build at one location or the other, or will we need the full amount of the bond at any of these locations? That's question number one, Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Williams, we do fully intend on utilizing all of the bond funds for Station 1 and Station 4. As we look at cost estimates for both facilities, and we look at the intangibles of a lot selection, those are the areas where you can have the utility of a bond eaten up when it comes to grading. As Chief Daniels mentioned earlier, the site on Chicago is going to require a higher level of grading and utility placement to accomplish that build out there compared to already having utilities at the current old City Hall site.
Thank you. My second question, Chief, comes first of all with an accolade for you and all your chiefs and your entire department. You have in the last 2 years done some remarkable things. In fact, I would say the advancements you've made in 2 years are beyond what we could have imagined. I wouldn't have expected you to be where you're at today. And so a great deal of appreciation and respect to you and your leadership and your chiefs that are a part of that. But what's more important to me even than your ongoing bonding with our community, because everybody knows, everybody loves firemen, right? That's just a given, right? But you said something that's maybe more important to me, and I'm gonna put your feet to the fire on this, Chief Daniels. Public safety is what you're arguing is more at stake in the city hall choice over the Chicago choice. You can prove that to me, that if we choose the current city hall property, even though we could sell that for more money, for an economic impact on the city, you're telling me that that location has greater public safety value to us than any of these other locations. Is that what I understand you to say? Because if you're asking me to choose to spend more money or less money, or make more money or lose more money at the cost of public safety, that's a different question for me. So that's where I want you to be clear for me, please.
I appreciate the question and the opportunity to clarify that, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Williams.
And you may have a lifeline behind you just in case Chief Shoup
okay,
is
yeah,
right there,
maybe.
so just, you know, so.
My intent was to highlight or articulate that moving us further away to the Chicago site would increase our response times given our certain routes. And so while it's, I can't prove it right now, we have done time trials to figure out what it would take to drive a fire engine, a ladder truck, a battalion chief vehicle, and support staff through that area to the downtown corridor, which increases our response times by 30 seconds, 45 seconds to a minute, depending on the time of day or depending on the route of traffic. So for a firefighter, getting there 30 seconds to a minute earlier, that does increase some life safety issues.
Chief Shoup, you want to elaborate on that?
Mayor, Council, Matt Shoup, Division Chief, I just demoted myself, Deputy Chief of Operations. Just a couple things to segue in on that. Well, fiscal responsibility and maintaining that, the intent to better the city and make sure that we use public funds in an appropriate manner are always a concern of ours. When we look at the response times, the Chicago property to the current fire station 1 is just under 1 mile difference in terms of route, not in terms of the crow flies, but as a route. And when we look at, as a fire increases and doubles in size every 1 minute that it burns, that 1 extra minute just made your fire double in size. So when we look at our downtown corridor not having all sprinklers in all their buildings because of the age of the buildings, which are also typically the higher rated times of our buildings that will burn, also with the influx of people, that 1 minute does make that big of a difference. When your route from going from the Chicago property into downtown is either coming across Chicago 4th, 5th, down and bouncing across Blaine or the Boulevard, or going over into Kimball, depending on if you're going into Indian Creek, at nighttime hours, when you have major events or significant events going on at Indian Creek, Kimball is a very crowded direction to come across, and getting a fire engine down there is very difficult. So when you look at response times on those types of key events, you're impacted our response time getting them down there, whereas where the current fire station is or over on the City Hall property, we can literally walk across and still make access and start patient care. The other disadvantage on the Chicago property is that response down the Chicago, is that you have Elevate across the street, which is going to be impacted by buses and students. During the morning and afternoon hours, you have buses dropping off children from school and picking them up. That also impacts our direction of travel because we're not able, with buses flashing red lights with children, we are not going to go with a code response down that route. And then at nighttime, depending on children playing on the weekends, nighttime hours, we're still going to slow our speed down because the last thing we want to do is injure any of our citizens with travel. So the Chicago corridor does create impacts to response times. Obviously, you would have to do time trials and calculate the amount of time that it affects it. But when you look at a mile of travel time and you also throw in the rail yard impact with the railroad going through there, that can make another negative impact on response times into the downtown corridor. It's kind of that Russian roulette. You never know when you're going to catch a train or not. But that does impact it because currently we're able to take the boulevard down to 10th up and over, and we can get to the east side of the city very quickly. If we're on the Chicago side and we have to get to 10th to come to the west side, we actually have to route through neighborhoods to get to 10th to come up and over. Or we have to go over into Centennial. Centennial creates another issue is because if they put a median through Centennial, we have no southbound direct access into Simplot Boulevard, because we would not be able to go from Chicago, cross Centennial to go south. We would only be able to go to the north and to the east. So that creates a whole nother operational concern for me and for us as fire administration is some of the routing that we would have. Another impact to consider is if the amphitheater does go in, that's going to create a significant amount of traffic coming into that area, and it's also going to impact a lot of people going down Chicago, which would then impact our response times. So there's a lot of things to consider in terms of actual response to the downtown corridor with going to Chicago versus the City Hall property. And then the other real big one, at least from my perspective, is that the fire station is the city's. It is the public's. It is their fire department. And having it in downtown just keeps that bond with the community, with the citizens, and allows us to provide the services that they need in community engagement. Stand for any further questions.
Do you have any other?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, sorry. I just want to, and I appreciate everything you said. I've actually been asked if I'd be willing to spend an extra $1 million just to satisfy what is the desire of our firefighters, and the answer to that is no. But what I want to be sure I'm hearing from you is you've removed all the emotion from this equation, because we know what you want. And as much as we are, you probably couldn't get a better council to support your fire department. I think you could get as good, but no better.
I couldn't disagree with you.
So I want you to tell me, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that your estimation professionally is that for public safety, after all of your analysis, here comes another lifeline, your choice for public safety purposes is the City Hall property. Is that what you're telling me?
That is correct.
Motion removed from it.
Motion removed. The Chicago property will cause impacts to response times into the downtown corridor across Chicago. And that's whatever time of day, whether it's trains, even if it's just a standard day, you are going to impact response times into the downtown area because of the route. And that's going through different commercial areas, it's going through residential areas. We will not drive at the same speed and as going down the boulevard or as Blaine to access the different areas. It will impact the response times.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, sir.
You betcha. Captain Gigray, did you have a?
If I may, Mayor, Council, Captain Gigray, I am one of the 3 captains that currently are stationed out of Station 2 on U-Stick. I think one thing that we're missing kind of on this is we've gone to a closest unit response right now. So the computer goes and looks at it and says, what's the closest unit to this address? Here comes the response. Right now, because of going to that, my station has actually picked up more area because we are technically closer. Being the south part of the town, if we move that station down to Chicago, now my station picks up a much larger response district. My concern is, like right now, Middleton's got a fire going on. Our engine is actually the only engine available in Caldwell right now. If we are on a call down by the hospital and I get a code call or something of that sort out by the lake, now I've been drawn further into the town where Station 1 originally would have picked up that call, and they still would pick it up if we were at that City Hall location. Is now we're doing a disservice to the people in the southern part of town until that Station 4 can get built, unless it's going to be built at the same time and be opened at the same time, which I'm not hearing that discussion happen. My concern is that the southern part of town will suffer for the station being moved over there, because we'll be drawn further into the north part of town and we won't be able to cover that southern part.
Yes, thank you so much for that insight. Appreciate that.
Sorry, do you mind if I segue a little bit on the way dispatch system works? with using the AVL, the Automatic Vehicle Locating System. It picks it by route, and that is based upon time of day, because it actually takes real-time data, whether it's a traffic accident, whether it's construction, whether it's various impacts on that flow. It basically takes like a Google map and looks at the route times, and it picks the closest unit tied to that call. So by moving that station 1 mile or 3/4 of a mile further out, that changes your route time, and it's down to the second on how it picks units. So if you're moving it out 45 seconds to a minute further out, it's going to start putting more calls down onto Station 2's area, because it's going to pick up that, Station 2 is going to pick up the area on that southern end, on the southern end of Station 1's response district. So you're going to put calls back onto a station that's already very busy as it is, and you're going to shift a lot of your call responses.
Councilor Stoddard?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think the same argument can be made relative to the Chicago location for our future, and that's what we have to look at. If you look at all the development going off on 2026 and the new development that's going to go north and west of Centennial and the interstate, within 10 years, we're going to have as much out there, if not more, than we have downtown. And when you look at the percentage of the calls that you folks actually make on actual flame fires, it's pretty low. So again, looking ahead at the future, keeping in mind what the taxpayers are looking at, again, I think a big argument can be made positive for the Chicago location relative to the new development we're going to have within the next 10 years out in that north and west area. So just comment. Thank you.
If I can comment on that, Mayor, Councilman Stonick. That is correct. As the growth continues to go up into the north, we will have to start considering Fire Station 5, which would impact those areas up in there. In terms of our call response, it is not just fire response. We do medical responses as well, which is 67% of our call volume. So when you look at the call response, it's not just flames, house fires, it's also medical response and minutes count as well as on those. So, and obviously it depends upon the type of medical response we have. So there's a lot of factors to look at, and it is something to consider that we are going to have to look at the future growth of the city and the additional fire stations.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just one last comment. I'm working with Chief Raleigh and the Canyon County Commissioners and Mr. Caldwell from the ambulance departments too, to try and get something figured out where we can have ambulance where we need them to, and hopefully we'll have our meeting within the next 15, 20 days, and that might solve some of that medical problem too. So, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Councilor Denver.
Deputy Shoup, I have a question for you. The parcel of property at the old City Hall is about 7/10 of an acre, and the property on Chicago is almost 3 acres. Are we limiting our ability to expand? Are we limiting our ability to provide additional resources or services to our community if we choose to develop a smaller lot than a larger lot?
It'll just change the dynamics, and I don't want to speak for Chief Daniels. It'll change the layout of the fire station. Whereas on the Chicago property, the fire station will be more horizontal, whereas on the Blaine property, the old City Hall property, it'll go up in, vertically, so it'll be a 2-story station. Will we limit our space? No, we will not. We are still able to have the same number of bedrooms, the same number of office space, the same number of apparatus space at either location. It's just one's more horizontally versus vertically.
Just one follow-up.
Yep.
So I'm sure all of
And
these.
hold on a second, should we bring Chief Daniels back up, or who wants to?
I don't know. I don't know.
I know
Depends
Chief
on what I'm
Shoup's
about
good
to
on
say.
the response times. They're good on everything, all of them, but their expertise is level, so.
Do we know why then the fire department purchased the land at Chicago? If all these times and all these numbers and the public safety was all considered at that time, why did we purchase the property on Chicago then? Why did fire do that?
That was before my time. I'll defer to Chief Raleigh on that.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Doty, that property was purchased when we had an opportunity to purchase a piece that the Streets Department, I believe, or Water Department, was looking to acquire in that area. As that area grows for other departments within the city, streets and water, et cetera. That opportunity came up to purchase that property, and then it was going to be a triangular piece of property that we would then utilize the 2 acres that's actually on Chicago. So it was more of a timing opportunity to acquire a piece of property. And then once we completed the analysis and we realized that it was in such a FEMA flood zone, that's when it started to become a public safety challenge for a facility there, because you can have a water department or like a streets maintenance area, but having a fire station with that higher degree of flood exposure, that's what kind of heightened our concerns to look at alternate locations.
More follow-up?
Yeah.
So we purchased the property out of haste without doing our research on the property before we purchased it? Because certainly, we shouldn't be having the fire department buy property for another city department to purchase from them later. That doesn't seem very transparent to me.
No, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Doty, I think the intent was to purchase it because we believed that that property was going to stand the test of time, and that it was an opportunity to partner, very similar to how we partner with the Parks Department for the property we have at Station 3 that we're transitioning into a city park. So we always look to be good partners with our other departments, and that's, kind of our journey as we work together, very similar to the police and fire training facility that's going to be proposed out there at the Streets Department.
Mr. Mayor?
Follow up, yeah.
And I agree, and I think that goes with, I think it was Councilman Dittmer, I'm not sure, but the 3 acres could be used for other departments to add on to at some point in the future as well, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from council? Do we have a clear, obviously there's no decisions, and when this does come back, does it need to list the property, or does it just say site to be chosen and then motions are made at that time, or does it need to actually list the site, Mr. Hilty?
Yeah, I think what makes sense would be a resolution when it comes back, identifying.
Which site? Okay, so obviously it's not a final decision, but some direction. We've had discussion on both sides on that, and so be great to have direction as far as what do you want, what does the council want that resolution to look like, I guess more or less is the question. Is that a fair way to state it? So what would you like that resolution to look like is the question that will be proposed.
I would
Councilor Williams?
propose City Hall simply because our professionals are telling us that's the public safety location, and for that reason, above all others.
Any discussion on that or other thoughts? Or like I said, this is the time, and like I said, honest conversation is appreciated, whether it's agreed with it or not, and kind of know which direction we go so we can come to a final conclusion on this. Councilor Allgood?
This kind of comes from my other job, but I am kind of against selling any city property unless it's a little piece here or there, because property is so expensive. If the city needs to acquire property in the future, we would pay far more than what we paid for the old City Hall spot, or the place out on Chicago. And in my opinion, there's some value to the taxpayer to retain these properties, so as this city grows, we're not out shopping for properties that, back in the early urban renewal days, we were moving property for $1.80 a square foot. Now we're hearing property values of $20 a square foot. And so the fact that we retain some property for future growth and not just sell it off has some value as well. And especially properties that fall in the area where we need to be located, I would really encourage us to hang on to, simply because of the expense of replacing it once we get to need it. But anyway.
Okay. Councilor Doty?
Just one more.
Yeah.
We haven't heard from you, Mr. Mayor. What are you thinking?
Oh, good question. So I see both sides, I know, and I know there's been so much research done on that by the fire department, and we looked at so many sites, right, Chief? We've sat down numerous times. We've looked at even across the street originally where the wash station is. We looked at the Chicago. We looked at the parking lot that was discussed earlier. We looked even out off of Simplot Highway when this first started, and we were looking out by R&M Steel along Farmway. So, we looked numerous places, so a lot of research and homework has been done on that. and I agree that if it is, the cost doesn't seem like be as much of a difference as it was originally thought in that regards. And, one of my biggest philosophies is you hire the best people and you let them do their job. And I truly believe that we have the best fire department, the best leaders in that, the best firefighters, and that we need, trust in them, that we've hired the best and that they're going to make that decision on what they feel is the best. There's times when we may disagree, and at the end of the day, we move forward with that direction, but, given the facts of the case, and to be honest, when this started, the intent was not the old City Hall. The intent, as you all know, was to sell that to regain the money from the remodel on this building and to recoup that. That was definitely that, and did not come up at all. And I still remember the first time that Chief brought it up, and I'm like, well, I don't know. And I told him, we got to be very clear that this was no shell game. This was never the intent at the beginning of it. It came up well after all of those discussions, and ultimately it would be up to the city council and let them know, like, this was not the intent to come in and kind of mislead in any way. Try to be very clear and transparent on that. But again, just, working together, and you start to narrow down, this site just doesn't work, that one doesn't. You get down to your last few and then decide which is the best remedy moving forward. And I feel that process was followed very close. As I mentioned, there was, probably at the end of the day, close to a dozen sites that really were considered and looked at and kind of narrowed them down to this doesn't work for these reasons, and other things that come up. And as you go through that process, you learn things you may not have been aware of in that regards, and you move forward with that, those knowledges as you gain them to really get to that final decision at the end of the day. And like I said, I will respect, and I know that the chief and the fire department will respect the decision that's made at the end of the day, but I do believe that there's merit in listening to our professionals that lead us and what they say, and moving forward in that direction. So those would be my thoughts. So, yep. Anything else? Okay, so it sounds like, I know that there was one that was, yes, Councilor Elgood.
I would just stick with my original vote from last time. If we go to a resolution again, I would stay where we're at.
And that was the old City Hall site, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Okay, so I think that's what I have heard in regards to what that resolution would say. Again, doesn't mean that everybody has to vote that way. They can vote how they want in that, but it appears that's from what I'm understanding, the direction that resolution would go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. We'll come back in 2 weeks with that resolution. But thank you for the accolades, but it really belongs to the men and women in the organization. We're blessed to be where we are leading these folks, and they do an outstanding job every day of the week. So we feel very blessed to be in the organization. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. I know there's been a massive amount of research and everything behind, and thank you so much for that information. And Captain Gigray, thank you for coming in, taking the time. I think that was also very educational, informational to remember that moving the bubble this way a little bit affects the bubble over here on that, which I think sometimes get missed, so we appreciate that also. Okay, so I think that, let's see if I can get back to our agenda. Again, that was just a discussion item, so there's no vote on that tonight. We'll be bringing that back in the very near future for council for final, if I can get to the decision on that. So with that, moves us into, it's still on old business, action item number 2. And now this one was, remind me all the changes we made. That one is removed. Okay, so that one is removed. So that moves us into new business. I see a head nod down there at the end, so I'm going to move forward on that. So new business, action item number 1, public hearing for the purpose of receiving public comment on budget amendments for FY beginning October 1, 2023 and ending September 30th, 2024. And we do need to figure out a zip line system or something like that to bring it over. So she's going to, yeah, so Debbie is getting the sign-up sheet. Rochelle, just filling in for Raylene tonight.
Yes,
appreciate
I'm
you being
here.
here, by the way.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
I'm here,
So-
sorry, I wasn't quite sure if we needed to hear from people first or if I need to announce anything. But yes, I am here tonight to present the budget amendment, and am here for comments and questions. We have total increase in budgeted expenditures for fiscal year '24 of just over $7.9 million, with additional revenues to offset that just over 6.4 million, with a total proposed use of additional fund balance of 1.6 million, just over 1.6 million. And about just a little over 1 million of that is going to be in the enterprise funds, while the other 440,000 or so will be using fund balance from the governmental funds. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Okay, questions for staff? Councilor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So where will we sit percentage-wise with fund balance after this budget amendment, assuming it passes? Otherwise, we've asked to stay at 30% of our general fund.
Correct.
Fund balance, will we still be there?
Yes, we will still be able to reserve the 30%. We'll have more than that. We won't know the actual numbers for fiscal year '24, but that is what the outlook is. It looks like there's room there.
Councilor Allgood.
Yeah, Rochelle, our 23-24 budget year was one of the highest budget years, the highest budget we'd ever proposed in this city, and then we still missed the target by almost 8 million. Is there anything that sticks out? I mean, why did we miss the mark so much? Can you enlighten us a little bit?
Overall budget, if you look at it from a wider view, if you were to just say budget in enterprise and have one number for enterprise and one number for government, we probably would have been able to sustain without doing a budget amendment, because there's been so much fluctuation. But by legislation, if you have a fund that is going to go over, you have to increase the appropriation for that fund. And because there were costs that were approved throughout the year due to additional revenue coming in, we have to increase the appropriated budget expenditure line. The items that are causing us to use additional fund balance in the enterprise fund were some land purchases, which they do have fund balance significant enough to sustain that, and I think the decision was approved, or the resolution was approved by council to purchase that earlier on in the year. And then some other things came up within the government side of funds that caused a few of the funds to go over. So when I look at the budget amendment, most of the time, the majority of the expenditures have offset from revenue, whether it's grant revenue or interest revenue. In this year's case, we had, 1.7 million additional in interest revenue come in, with interest rates going the way they are and our funds being held in the LGIP account. And so that allowed us to have more room for expenditures throughout the year. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to increase the budget. It just means that we had a lot of additional revenue come in. There were some unplanned expenses, though, that we will have to use additional appropriation for. And we have to be transparent with all of it, though. So we have to put it all out there and let you guys know that, what we're doing, and have you guys be aware of it. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Rochelle? Okay, very good. So, as mentioned, this is a public hearing item. There is no one signed up to testify on this item. So with that, I would stand for, and if I'm not doing this right, please, Mr. Hilty or Madam Guyer, put me back. But stand for a motion to close the public hearing, or public testimony portion of this hearing.
So moved.
So a motion from Councilor Doty and a second from Councilor Stoddick. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. So that would move us into the action item number 2, which is the bill number 67, ordinance 3628 for the FY 2024 amended budget, with a request to move for its passage by title only. So any discussion on that or any motions? Councilor Williams.
I move to sponsor Bill number 67, ordinance number 3628, and request to move for its passage by title only.
Good. Do we have a second? Second. So motion from Councilor Williams and a second from Councilor Doty for adoption of Bill number 67, ordinance number 3628, for approval of that and move for its passage by title only. Any discussion on that motion? With that, the voting is open at this time. And all votes are cast, so voting is closed. And that motion passes unanimously. That moves us into action item number 3, and this is simply a public hearing to provide for the opportunity for public input in regarding to the levy for foregone revenue for fiscal year 2025. So there are nobody signed up on this item. So with that, I would stand for a motion to, before I do that though, just to ensure that, is there anyone that wished to speak on this item that would like to come forward at this time? Okay, so with that, I would stand for a motion to close this public hearing. So it's a motion from Councillor Stoddard and a second from Councillor Allgood. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor, or can this be a voice vote, or does it need to be a roll call?
Yeah, this could be a voice vote.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that motion passes. So that now moves us into action item number 4. And this is for consider resolution authorizing the purchase of a sweeper for use by the Parks Department in the amount of $68,400 using park impact fee funds.
And I am here again,
Okay.
and on behalf of Ray Lynn, who's kind of overseeing things in the interim while we look for a new Parks and Rec director. So this is something that Ray Lynn was working on with the Parks Department. It was identified a need for this item, and we were able to find some additional funding from park impact fees for the pool bathhouse. There was some funding because the pool bathhouse did not start until later on in the year. There was additional funding and room for the purchase of this. And so with that, I'll stand for questions.
Very good. Thank you so much. Any questions? Councillor Stoddard, did you have a question or? Okay. Colonel, you're all right. Okay, I don't see any. So with that, is there any discussion or any motions from any council members? Councillor Allgood?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the resolution to purchase a sweeper by use of the Parks Department in the amount of $68,400.
Very good.
Second.
So a motion from Councillor Allgood and a second from Councillor Dentenberg for approval of this resolution. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, actually, hold on a second. This does require, I just got in the groove. Okay, so with that, the voting is open at this time. And all votes are cast, the voting is closed, and that does pass unanimously. And that moves us into a new 5A, and I'm going to need some help on all of these, Madam Guyer, if you don't mind. So what was the next? I didn't have a pen to make all the notes. Okay. Okay, very good. So it sounds like Mr. Jenkins, come on forward. So this is the new 5A. So this is a resolution authorizing the execution of a real estate lease with Tom Veazey for 4 parking spaces located at 712 Cleveland Boulevard.
Great. Mayor, Council, thank you for your time this evening. We actually have, I believe, Thomas Veazey joining us on Teams, and I think he would like to start off the discussion. I'm here to answer questions that may arise during our discussion, but I'd love to have him take the lead, and I'll stand on the side and answer questions as they come up.
Perfect. Sounds great. Mr.
Thank you.
Veazey, are you there? Can you hear us? Is he there? Do you see him, Marlon? Oh,
I'm here.
Okay.
Excuse me, yeah. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, Mr. Mayor and council members, it's a little difficult for me. I can't see the meeting going on, so I've got my live stream on my left hand, looking at the screen here, and I got 3 girls under 5 in the other room, so I will do my best to make it quick for you. I'm seeking a couple parking spaces from the city of Caldwell. My name's Tom Veazey. This is my 5th building in downtown Caldwell, and I rehab old commercial buildings and prepare them for new businesses and new tenants. And on this particular building at 716 Blaine, we don't have any parking right adjacent to the building itself. And I've reached out to both neighbors, and rightly so, they want to keep their parking for their tenants. And so I've had an awful hard time getting any tenants to lease the space without some sort of agreement to have parking for their employees. And I'm happy to say we do have a tenant that is looking for 4 parking spaces, and I need approval from the city in order to maybe make that happen. So, open for discussion.
Good, thank you so much. Any questions from Councilor Williams?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Veazey, for being here. But the reason I asked for this to be pulled, and I was surprised it wasn't old business, simply because we've discussed this once before. And when we discussed it once before, this council had some specific questions and concerns about this lot, and we wanted some of those answered before we made a decision. And I don't know that those questions have been answered yet. And so it's really not new business. This is old business that was in the consent calendar without us hearing from those people that were supposed to bring back those issues to us. And so I just wonder where we're at on bringing those back. We were talking about the value of the lot and how we analyze that, and should we keep it or sell it? Who was using it, and did it have proper signage, and all these other things, and some of those don't even matter now. And Mr. Veazey, I apologize that you're kind of drug into this with us. This doesn't have anything to do with you necessarily, but it does have to do with the city council and our request to get some information. And so if that information isn't ready to be presented to us today and satisfy all those questions that we had when we have already talked about this once before, I'd be a no vote just until we get all of the information so that I know what I'm voting on.
Understood. Yeah, this is my first time presenting to the city council, so I am unfamiliar with all of the rules and regulations, and happy to try and get more of that information for you. I will say that the lease is, it's a one-year term. It's renewable on this with the city's consent, and I don't know a lot about the lot or how much it's worth or anything like that, but I can say that I have put a lot of time and effort and money into this building, and it's proving really challenging not to get a tenant there. We know there's a lot of parking conversations going on in Caldwell, and I'm trying to solve this specific issue in somewhat of a short term so that I can continue to put businesses in the downtown.
Very good. Thank you so much, Mr. Veazey. Steve, could you come to the podium? So I know that you had provided a letter, I think it was on regards to this property, is that correct? Earlier, was that earlier today, or that email on that? Did it have some of the answers to those questions, or?
Yes, Mayor, Council sent out an email this morning regarding some of the questions that had arisen the last discussion that we had at the former city council meeting. I didn't speak directly to the value of the property, but I can update you on the employee sign that was up, the employee parking sign that has been removed since our last discussion. Furthermore, we did some research with the former leasee that had parking permits there in that lot, and he no longer has a lease with the city. So there's no designated spaces that have been occupied by other users in that particular lot. So it's wide open and available for use. The previous lease was, I believe it expired in 2015. It was at $9 per stall per year, or excuse me, $9 per stall per month. And that was the arrangement that was previously situated. So I did do some research, which I articulated in the email that I provided to you, to the council, and just looked around at other cities in the Treasure Valley and some corresponding rates that were associated with parking lots, on-street parking lots. And I felt that this was an appropriate rate to consider at $20 per stall per month. And that was just the average that I was able to identify based on the research that was conducted.
Does that answer all your questions, some of your questions, or?
Well, we discussed, and I don't know if anybody else remembers this discussion, but we discussed, what if we sold this, and is there any interest, and maybe Mr. Veazey would like to buy the lot, I don't even know, but I just am a little taken back that it had to be pulled from the consent calendar. Where are we at? Are we even considering selling this anymore, or are we just moving ahead with a one-year lease? The resolution doesn't even have any of the details of the lease in it. I know there is a lease, but what are we, it just is, the whole thing is a little puzzling to me.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Doty.
Yes, and I remember the conversation. Do we know the value of the lot and the taxes that it would bring in, Steve, if it were to be sold at its value?
So Mayor, Councilor Doty, we do not. We just have some comps that we're familiar with in the downtown for similar sized lots, but we don't have an exact estimate or value proposition for that particular lot.
What do you think it's worth then, just off the cuff, based on the comps?
Rough estimate, and we did have some properties that recently were auctioned, and they sold for $125,000, one of them was, and then the other one was right around $100,000. So I would say that this lot would sell at a similar, rate, but I think the value on paper would be much greater than, I think, what we've experienced with previous auctions.
So maybe just to follow up with Rochelle. So a $100,000 lot, do you know what taxes that brings in per year? A lot that's valued at $100,000 with nothing on it? Roughly, I'm not holding you to any specific number, just since you do it daily.
Well, if there's nothing on it, it would be the appraised value of the land. I'm not an appraiser, so I'd have to look at the land values. I'm not sure what land values are going for, but if you took that land value and times it by the square footage and then times that by the levy rate, you would get approximately what the taxpayer revenue would be on it.
Are you able to do that right now?
Do you know what the going rate is for?
Well, I think we're going to go with the 100,000, is that?
Okay, 100,000.
Just so I have an idea.
I think our levy rate is around 3%, so what's that? Or 0.003%. Let me use my calculator, hold on.
Okay, sounds good. And I also, I'll be remiss if I didn't mention also that for employees in our downtown, we love our employees, of course, and we love our businesses, but the goal for us has been to move employees further out onto the peripheral lots so that they wouldn't take up premium spaces on the core. So we felt like this approach would help us to eliminate some of the congestion in the core related to employees that are parking in the free spaces that may be evident at particularly this building at 716 Blaine, on Blaine Street or other areas that could be available for customers or visitors alike. So we felt like maybe the employee lot on this side of town, on the south side, there are no other employee lots that we can think of that would be accommodating for future leases. So we felt like this would be an appropriate path forward.
So I don't know what our levy rate is exactly. I think it's a little less than 3%, but 3% of 100,000, or it's not 3%, sorry, it's 0.003%, would come to about $300. So I'm guessing between $200 and $300, depending on where the levy rate stands.
Sorry, you can't touch these things. For the year, correct?
Yes, that'd be annual.
So I would say if we're going to go this way, that we either go all in and try and rent all the spots, because it would make more in tax revenue, or revenue for the city, not tax revenue, but revenue for the city, than just 4. So I get that the gentleman only wants 4 spots, but if this is the direction of council, my additional direction would be we try and do it all we go to the businesses and see if they will take all the spots, so that it brings in revenue to the city.
This was 4 spots, $20 per spot per month, correct?
Correct.
So that'd be, I'm trying to do my math, so 80 times 12, 800, about $960, I think, for the year, for the 4 spots. So, and then we could try to go out and, yeah, per month. So it'd be $80 a month times 12, so it'd be $960 in rental income. And we do have somebody.
I'm going to take the heat off
Yes.
Stephen just for a second, if I can introduce myself. I'm Brianna Miller with TOK Commercial. I represent Tom Veazey on all of his properties that he's been purchasing, helping to lease up. So Stevens does a great job of teeing all this up for us. I told Tom I would be here in person. So he can keep answering questions, but you're asking about comps and market value, and that's what I do for a living. So if you have questions for me. Ann Kunkel also represents Tom Veazey, and I believe, were you on that email? She sent you the lease, so there was a copy of the lease sent over on Friday of last week.
Okay, Councilor Allgood, did you have a question for?
Yeah, I have a question for, I'm looking at a map here. It looks like there's 8 spaces. Is there more than 8 spaces, or
You know, when,
just?
yeah, sorry.
I'm just wondering how big a lot we're talking about here.
When the discussion first started, we were told that potentially Tom could lease 10 spaces on that L-shaped lot. That it kind of just L-shapes around the building. And this particular tenant just didn't need 10 spaces, and so Councilmember Mr. Doty I think the intent is that this could be used for other businesses, but this particular 6,000 square foot building only needs 4, and it pulls those parking spaces off of Blaine, where now you're not metering anymore. So those employees could be parking on Blaine all day.
Yeah.
Councilor Stoddard.
Mr. Mayor, I think, we just talked about not selling city property, and I think that's a moot subject right now. And with the yearly lease, I don't see any reason why we should deny this, because we are making some money on it. And if we are in agreement that we're not going to sell it, the worth of that property is, again, it's moot. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So 14 spots is what I counted on the Google
was it?
Maps Earth View. So there's some angled, and then it's tough to see on the west side, east side, whatever that is, next to the building, there's straight in parking. So it seems to be 14 total. So obviously this would be the 4. This would be about triple what we would bring in on property tax on just the property itself, it looks like. And then also the option of maybe perhaps trying to lease even more of those to other tenants in that area, or business owners.
And I should note that the tenant that we have a lease ready to sign just is wanting these spots. It is a local, the operators are Campos Market, but they would open like a kids play place, which is kind of it's a nice community use for the downtown.
Councilor Doty?
Just some follow-up. Yes, clearly the parking situation has changed in downtown. I do share Councilor Williams' frustration, though. It was on the consent calendar. We had asked for additional information. It's not that this is a bad idea or a bad plan from year to year, but it is frustrating when those aren't answered and they're put on the consent calendar. So unfortunately, you're taking some of this questioning, and then again with the change of the situation downtown. But it would be nice if someone keeps track of that and gets that information back to us in a timely manner, so we don't debate that here in the public, or at least it's open to the public where they know the information that we requested. Just one additional, if I were going to make a motion, it would certainly be that this is used for business parking at the same rate, and that we make a good faith effort to fill that up for 1 year contract, so that we can benefit from the most money off of that we can, if we're not going to sell the property. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other discussion or any motions, or Councilor Algen?
Councilor Doty, was that a motion or were you just commenting?
I didn't know if there was additional comments to mine, so I didn't quite make it a motion, but I can if we're ready.
I'll make a motion yeah. So, Madam, do you have anything else before we go ahead?
I'm good.
Okay. I move to approve the resolution authorizing the execution of a real estate lease with Thomas Veazey for these 4 parking spots. And in this resolution, I would also include what Councilor Doty said, that we make an effort to offer the remaining spots to other businesses that may need parking at a year-at-a-time rate.
Okay, very good. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
So it's a motion from Councilor Algen and a second from Councilor Stoddard in regards to, this is again the new 5A, resolution authorizing the execution of this lease with Thomas Veazey. Any discussion on that motion? With that, the voting is open at this time. All votes are cast. The voting is closed. And that motion passes unanimously. That moves us into the new 5B, which was removed from the consent calendar. This is for approved resolution authorizing the execution of a professional services agreement for legal services with Joan Williams, Furman Gurley, not to exceed $100,000 for the procurement of right-of-way necessary for the construction of the Linden Road and Ward Road roundabout project. So, Debbie, or you, or is... Oh, Rob or Haley? Rob, looks like it's you. Since you stuck around, you get to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. We spoke about this project before after the last meeting in executive session, and we are happy to answer any questions that you may have. Depending on the nature of the questions, it may be necessary to go back into executive session at some point if there's further discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
We might have to go back in executive session, but my question would be, are we going to close Linden Road down or not in the future? And if we do, there's no reason to spend this money on Ward and Linden, would there be? Because of the airport
Okay.
situation is what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Stoddard, that is you bring up a good point. There is a plan in the future to close Linden down between Smead and Aviation. I don't know that that has a huge bearing on this intersection. In fact, it may. There's a lot of traffic on Linden now that comes from the west. But once that section of road is closed off, Smead is going to come down and tie directly into Linden, and so you're still going to get quite a bit of traffic. And so there's still going to be a demand for that intersection to be rehabilitated. And as you know, that intersection is proposed to be a roundabout. There are 2 schools just to the north on Ward, and so that intersection, we get a lot of complaints about it. And so it would be my personal feeling that we still need to move forward on that. And it would also be my, and I'm sure that all of the engineering traffic studies and the things that we have in that area would probably back that up.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Is there any way that we can coordinate that to make sure we don't shut the people off north and west of the interstate on that? See what I mean? When you said Smead was going to come down and we're going to make that connection anyhow, but again,
Correct.
those people coming from, say, 2026 or even 44 coming down that way, which they do right now, because like we mentioned before, the stoplight there on Eustic and, on Linden and the boulevard sometimes can be backed up all the way to the railroad tracks, and I'm just, can we coordinate all that together so everything's done at the same time so we don't shut those people off on the other side of the interstate?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Stoddard, you bring up a good point. We have a pretty extensive process in the engineering department to track all of our road closures to make sure that we're not overlapping and causing dead spots basically in the city. We have in the proposed budget this year, we are starting design on Linden and the Boulevard. And that's a pretty massive project, and that's probably not going to go to construction for 2 or 3 years. The roundabout is scheduled for 2025, pending this one last piece of property that needs to be acquired. And so the way we would do that is we try to mitigate the closures as best we can, but some closures just have to happen in order to get the improvements done. And we try to coordinate projects as best we can, but it's not always perfect. We try to stagger them so that we're not causing too many hardships on the drivers of the Caldwell.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Councilor Doty.
Just want to follow up, because I know what's going to come out here soon, but you're not shutting down Linden tomorrow or the next year. Do we have a timeline? If it were ever to be shut down for the airport, we're not talking within 30 days or 90 days, because that'll be the next question is when, because we've had this conversation now. Do we have a projected date? I mean, we still have to, at the airport, put in a tower. I mean, there's many steps before we get to shutting down Linden, right? So
Yeah.
I guess it's not on your books anywhere to shut it down anytime soon.
No, and I know just enough about the airport to make me dangerous. I would probably defer that to our airport director. That is all contingent on the number of airplane takeoffs and landings we get to when the runway would need to be extended, and then when that's triggered, then Linden has to be closed off.
Yeah, and maybe Scott, while you're coming up, just for the councils, this would actually be a great workshop to do in the near future. I know I've been approached recently by a couple businesses asking that it does be this year. It's not going to be this year, but they want it because it'll bring in a lot more business, a lot more hangars, a lot more charter flights coming in and out of Caldwell. So we are asking, I'm sure Scott is as well, that they would love to have it closed this year and expand their business, but obviously it's not going to happen this year, but we do need to have some good discussions about that and look at the economic impact, positive economic impact that would bring to the city as far as the new businesses it could attract. But that would be a great workshop to work through that and see where are we at exactly. So, Scott.
Absolutely. Mr. Mayor, Councilor Doty, Scott Swanson, Director of Aviation for Caldwell. I think with that question on the closure of Linden itself being from Smead to Aviation for a future runway extension. That currently sits in the master plan that was done in 2020. That's a 20-year outlook and usually redone at every 10-year mark. So there's nothing saying that that project can't get carried forward every time we redo a master plan for the airport. I would expect, just based on traffic volume, the increase of the population of the area and more people trying to come in, and then trying to link this the best possible way as far as traffic flow with everything going on 2026, 10th, the proposal Rob talked about with the whole intersection at Linden and the Boulevard. I would say probably within, the earliest, a safe bet would be 5 years from now to see Linden closed. Once everything else has circulated itself out, people are used to driving on these newly constructed, especially with the entire addition of a whole new side of 2026 and then everything going up there, because I foresee just Caldwell continuing to grow as it has over the past 5 years and whatever that looks like. But at the same time, the only thing that would construed a closure immediately coming down from the FAA would be depending on what type of based aircraft come to Caldwell or how many operations those aircraft come to Caldwell. Because the bigger aircraft require a larger runway safety area on the departure ends. And if that were to occur, then we would be required to close Linden for the safety of those aircraft activities.
Sure. And just to add on to what
Yeah.
you said, it sounds like if it could happen at any time between now and 5 years, we do need to have some discussion so that that opportunity arises. We're not caught without a plan, right? Or once
Correct,
these
yes.
things are accomplished,
Yeah.
if that's a concern for Mr. McDonald as well, right? On what he just talked about, having too many roads closed down at once, I think we probably should get a plan in place so that it's ready to go.
No, absolutely. I think that'd be, as the mayor and council said, a great workshop going into the next fiscal year with the advisory board and everyone else, and then get that set and then what that's going to look like. Say that, if that closure were to occur next year, what does that do to the rest of the city and how traffic functions?
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Sir.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald, as well. So again, this item is before council for any further discussion or any motions regarding this resolution.
Let Mike have one.
Councilor Denver.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the resolution authorizing the execution of a professional service agreement for legal services with Jones Williams Firm in Gurley, not to exceed $100,000.
Very good. Do we have a second? Second. So a motion from Councilor Denver with a second from Councilor Williams for approval of the resolution. Any discussion on that motion? With that, the voting is open. All votes are cast, the voting is closed, and that motion passes unanimously. That moves us into our next action item. So this is for some reappointments, and then we'll get right into a new appointment for some of our appointed officials. So we are going to begin with Mr. Scott Swanson, who was just up here. So Scott was hired last year. He's done an amazing job. Super excited to have him on board. Just a great direction and everything he's been able to do out at the airport. So this is for a motion or a request for approval of the appointment of Scott Swanson as the Director of Aviation for the City of Caldwell, and this is for a term to expire September 30th, 2027. Councilor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have several questions for Mr. Swanson before, no, I'm kidding.
He was ready to answer them.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we reappoint Mr. Swanson to the Director of Aviation for a term to expire September 30th, 2027.
Very good. Do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion from Councilor Williams and a second from Councilor Denver for the reappointment of Scott Swanson as the Director of Aviation as described. Any discussion on that motion? Councilor Stoddick.
Mr. Mayor, you don't need to get up. I just hope that, you and I have had some discussions and disagreements about how we cooperate with the Airport Commission. I just hope that continues and improves over this past year, because I think it's very important as far as our decision-making process, especially on major items that are, in the $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 bracket. So I hope we continue that and we just do a better job. You had my yes vote, but I just wanted to make sure that we understand each other. So thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Okay, with that, the voting is open at this time.
Mr. Mayor, is this just for him?
This is just for him. Yeah, we'll do them one at a time. So, Okay, all votes are in, so with that, voting is closed, and that passes unanimously. So, very good. So that probably does deserve a round of applause. I heard somebody trying to clap for you, Scott. We'll give you some applause. We'll give you a little love, so appreciate all you've been doing. Okay, so next is for the reappointment of Raylyn North as our Director of Finance. Raylyn is unable to be here this evening, but appreciate all that she has been doing the last few years in that regard. So this would be, again, so reappointment for Raylyn North as Director of Finance for a term to expire September 30th of 2027. Any motions in regards to that? Yes, Councilor Doty.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion from Councilor Doty, a second from Councilor Stoddard. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, with that, then the voting is open, and this is, again, specifically for Raylyn North for our Director of Finance. So all votes are cast, so voting is closed, and that motion passes unanimously as well. And we're excited to have Raylyn on for another 3 years. So that, yes, even though she's not here, we'll give her, Rochelle can pass it on to make sure she knows she got an ovation, so we're excited for that. Our next one is for Robin Collins, our Planning and Zoning Director. So Robin, as well, this is for a reappointment for her, term to expire September 30th, 2027. Robin's doing an excellent job in the Planning and Zoning Department. Couldn't be more pleased with everything she's doing in there and just the progress they continue to make. Amazing staff that she has, and just does, she's phenomenal employee. So thank you for what she does. So, any votes?
I just want to make
Yeah.
a comment, and then I think Mike had me beat for the motion, but I just want to say, Robin, it's been a breath of fresh air to have you in there, and we appreciate what you do. You get back to us in a timely manner when we're asking questions, so I just really appreciate you not letting us hang out there and make irrational decisions without any answers. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Councilor Dimber.
I also wanted to express my appreciation for Robin and the work that you do. We deal all the time with this little logo back here. Are we a farm to fork community, or are we Idaho's 4th largest city? And you deal with those discussions and those issues every day, and we appreciate you tackling the hard questions and leading our city, and I appreciate that. And so I make a motion that we reappoint Ms. Collins.
Good, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion from Councilor.
And just kind of ditto the same comments, you know, growth in Caldwell is like probably one of the biggest deals this group deals with is growth, and your responsiveness to us and the public is just greatly appreciated. It, like I said, it's probably the biggest deal we do on a day-to-day basis, and your advice and input and guidance is very much appreciated.
So that's a motion from Councilor Denver and a second from Councilor Allgood for the reappointment of Robin Collins as the Planning and Zoning Director. So with that, voting is open this time. All votes are cast, so voting is closed, and that motion passes unanimously as well. Congratulations. Okay, and the next one is actually a new appointment, so very excited to present Tiffany DeFrance to the council. So Tiffany is here, so we're going to allow her a few minutes to come and kind of introduce herself and answer any potential questions you may have. So Councilor Dittenber and Councilor Register were part of the interview panel that interviewed all the candidates, and Tiffany was their #1 choice unanimously from the committee in that regard. So I had the chance to meet with Tiffany, sit down and talk, and was very impressed with her vision. She was one of the few candidates that came forward with a vision. That was the request. What does the future of Parks and Recreation in the city of Caldwell look like, and how do we get there? And Tiffany had a great vision in that regards, and so excited to see what that is. And so with that, I have the opportunity to present her to the council, and just to kind of, and this is obviously the council's prerogative, but the proposal is for the appointment through 2027 for 3 years, and that is to allow Tiffany the assurance that she does have that job for that amount of time, as it is a transition for her and her family. As you're aware, any appointed official can be removed really at any time with 4 council member votes and the mayor, or unanimous with the city council. I know there was a few concerns about should it be 3 years, should it be 1 year, as we've done in other instances, to come back, and some thought about, well, does it go for 3 years with perhaps a review at the 1-year mark to come back and just kind of present, these were the goals we had, this is what we achieved, and this is where we're at compared to a year ago, just to kind of have an update rather than having to do a reappointment in a year, but just have that analysis to come back and see where it's at, and if the parks are where we really wanted them to be, expected them to be, and then we can move forward at that time in that regards. But that was kind of some of the reasonings and thoughts behind that, and with that, I'll turn it over to Tiffany, kind of introduce herself, and then see if there's any questions.
Hi, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Tiffany, as you guys know. I come from Payette. I'm the current recreation director over at Payette. I have a background in exercise science and leadership as a coach and a manager at Payette, as I was saying. I have an education of leadership, and I know I'm young, but I am really ambitious, and I'm super excited to get started and see where I can take the city of Caldwell and the Parks and Recreation.
Excellent. Mike, do you mind chiming in? You were on the interview panel, so maybe give a little insight on how that went.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did have the opportunity to interview all the candidates, and Tiffany stood out as our number one candidate. And the reason why she stood out was because her level of energy and level of enthusiasm about the city of Caldwell and where we're going. The other thing that stood out to the selection committee was her very bold approach in her presentation, where she had indicated that there was some definite problems with our Parks Department as they were, and we took her decision to make that sort of a statement as a leadership quality, as somebody who wasn't afraid to say that there are things that need to be fixed and there are things that need to be addressed. One of the most impressive things, and this is no disrespect to the fire department and the police department, I know you guys are sleeping, but one of the things that she said is, our police department and our fire department get a lot of money, but people drive by our parks every day. And so just like we see our police department every day, our fire department every day, she was concerned that when people drive by our parks every day, that they have the same high regard for our parks that we do for our law enforcement. And so we just thought that she had the insight, the ability, and more than anything, the drive and the enthusiasm to lead Caldwell's Parks and Recreation Department over the next few years, at least 3 years.
Any questions for Tiffany? Okay. We're really taking it easy on you tonight, so. Okay, yes, Councilor Dittenberg.
Mr. Mayor, since, unless there's other discussions, I make a motion that we approve Tiffany as our new Parks and Recreation Director for the city of Caldwell.
Very good. Do we have a second? Second. So that's a motion from Councilor Dittenberg with a second from Councilor Doty for the appointment of Tiffany DeFrance as the Parks and Recreation Director for a term to expire September 30th, 2027.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
You were kind of talking a bit there about the different options in her appointment, 1 year, 3 years, 1 year review. When we're making this motion, are we making a motion on just a 3-year or any of those other options, or what motion are we making here?
So I'd maybe go back to Councilor Dittenberg, so maybe to clarify on that. I thought that's what it was for the 3, but is it? Do you mind clarifying for that motion?
So I guess, I don't have any problem making amending the resolution or being more specific about appointing Ms. DeFrance for a 3-year period.
Okay. And then the second?
That's the way I understood.
Okay, very good.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear.
I appreciate that very much, so it's good. Okay. Any discussion?
Even though she hates firefighters.
I don't think she does. I don't think she said that. So Councilor Dittenberg made those comments. There we go. We got a fist bump there. So I think it was just the point that you do see your parks every day. So it is important to maintain them, because I'm sure you all hear about it too, right? When they don't look good, we hear about it constantly. So appreciate that. So that is the motion. So with that, voting is open. And all votes are cast, so voting is closed. And that passes unanimously. Congratulations. Okay, Okay, so at this time, we get to do some swearing in, so we'll do that. Obviously, we will do Ray Lynn at another time, since she's not here this evening, so when she is back, so we'll move forward with that. Scott, we'll start with you. You want to come forward? You can just stand right there on that side of that podium. One side of the podium, that's right. Okay, raise your hand, repeat after me. I, Scott Swanson,
I, Scott Swanson,
do solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Idaho,
the Constitution of the State of Idaho,
and the laws, ordinances of the City of Caldwell,
and the laws and ordinances of the City of Caldwell,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties of Aviation Director
the duties of Aviation Director
for the City of Caldwell, Canyon County, Idaho,
for the City of Caldwell, Canyon County, Idaho,
to the best of my ability
to the best of my ability
during my continuance therein.
during my continuance therein.
There it is, now it's official. Okay, Robin.
Mr. Mayor, will you stand
Oh,
so
yeah.
much? Okay, thank you. Scooch. Yes, thank you. Ready? Thank you. What he said.
Ditto.
There you go.
Okay. I, Robin Collins,
I, Robin Collins,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Idaho,
Constitution of the State of Idaho,
and the laws, ordinances of the City of Caldwell,
and the laws and ordinances of the City of Caldwell,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of Planning and Zoning Director
the duties of Planning and Zoning Director
of the City of Caldwell, Canyon County, Idaho,
of the City of Caldwell, Canyon County, Idaho,
to the best of my ability
to the best of my ability
during my continuance therein.
during my continuance therein.
Very good.
Go, one more time.
Hey, Tiffany. Okay, repeat after me. I, Tiffany DeFrance,
I, Tiffany DeFrance,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Idaho,
the Constitution of the State of Idaho,
and the laws, ordinances of the City of Caldwell,
and the laws and ordinances of the City of Caldwell,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of Parks and Recreation Director
the duties of Parks and Recreation Director
of the City of Caldwell, Canyon County, Idaho,
of the City of Caldwell, Canyon County, Idaho,
to the best of my ability
to the best of my ability
during my continuance therein.
during my continuance there.
Very good. Congratulations.
There we go. One more time.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And thank you again, very excited for all of you. We truly have incredible staff at the City of Caldwell. We couldn't accomplish what we get done without each and every one of them, all the way from our appointed officials down to anybody and everybody here at the city. We all play an equal and important part, so excited to celebrate you and your departments, and excited to see what you continue to do for the City of Caldwell. Okay, so that moves us into, let's see here, get back on here. I think the finance report, is that right? Am I in the right? Okay, very good. So we have the finance report. Councilor Allgood.
Mr. Mayor, I move that accounts payable in the amount of $2,518,814.32, represented by check numbers 180667 through 180925, and payroll for the amount of $761,775.81, represented by check numbers 39587 through 39606, and direct deposits be accepted, payments approved, and vouchers filed in the office of the city clerk.
Very good. Do we have a second?
Second.
So it's a motion from Councilor Allgood and a second from Councilor Williams in regards to acceptance of the finance report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. And that moves us now into council comments. Councilor Doty.
Mr. Mayor, I just say it was a great, successful event at the Plaza this weekend. And just for clarification, I think the police did win the tug of war. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Very good. Councilor Stoddard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is probably for you and Mr. Jenkins. I was in a Canyon County Concerned Citizens meeting here the other day, and Napa's going to try and develop another auditorium district, and I think you're familiar with it, aren't you, Steve? Anyway, just thinking ahead for not only the taxpayers, but just the community, that maybe we should start thinking about that also, especially when we get more hotels, motels in here, and that offsets some of the burden that we have on the taxpayer. So maybe in the future, you might want to bring that up. And I know the first time they tried to pass it, it didn't go through. I don't know why. I didn't ever get the details, but they're pretty confident it'll do it this time, and that'll support the Civic Center and the Ford Center. And they're estimating that it'll probably contribute about $1.5 million off the tax base for the taxpayers. So let's think about that for the future. Thank you.
Yeah, no, appreciate that very much. Councilor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really don't have anything tonight, but are you in your comments going to address why we removed old business number 2? Because our friend from Envision is here, and I'd at least like to recognize him, and I know he and Scott were prepared. Were you going to at least?
I was not. Maybe Mark.
Because I think we owe him at least
Yeah.
recognition that he's been here the whole meeting, and we've got unfinished business, but just maybe a courtesy is all I'm looking for.
Yeah, whether Mark or Scott, I don't know who'd be better. But
Well, I
if you don't
can
mind.
certainly do that. So, yeah, I talked with Corey on the way in tonight, let him know what we were doing. This is going to be coming back to you, we hope, a week from today. There's circling around that date for a special council meeting for an action item. There's a couple resolutions that we need to have you consider in order to secure those funds out of this fiscal year. And so talk to Scott about that need, and then talk to Corey as well.
All right, anything else? No. Okay. Councilor Allgood.
Nothing much, just the discussion of property brought up a question for me, and I don't need an answer tonight, but we discussed quite some time ago about the piece of property west of J.C. Park. We have J.C. Park, the old Chamber of Commerce, and then we own a piece of property next to it. We had discussed maybe doing something with that piece of property, and then it kind of fell off the radar. I was curious where we're at with that, or if we're doing anything with that, and what the plan was.
Yeah, no, very good. I'm glad you brought that up. We'd had some discussion today, and yeah, what's the best way to address it? So since it's up, I say we go and talk to it. And I'm going to, Chris, since we do have a great Lions member in the audience, it is Lions Park now. So I want to make sure we do give a huge shout out. I know it was JC Park forever. I'm like, what is JC Park? But I know it was changed to Lions a few years ago. So we do appreciate that. So as council remembers, and if you can envision it, we don't have the map up. So you have Lions Park, and in the middle there is a property the city used to own back then. I think it was the Chamber building many years ago. And now there's a gentleman that owns it, and there's a daycare being run out of that. And then there's another piece of property on the west side of that is just, if I say grass, that's being very generous on that side. And so if you remember, we did actually come to the council a while back to see if they were interested in buying that middle property. There's potential of doing that. Was not interest at that time to do so. And then does the city use that as a community space, something of that nature, connecting those two parks? Because right now you have basically two parks with a private property in between. So does the city look at purchasing that property and doing something? Does it look at selling? And I know we've talked about not wanting to sell property. Does it sell that property on the other side that's not being used? Do we revitalize or redevelop that property, in conjunction perhaps with a partnership with CHA to do some type of, affordable housing for, public employees, whether that's police, fire, school teachers, something of that nature, that they could make it more affordable on that. So those are all kind of options in that regard. So, but I know that there has been some renewed discussion about purchasing that middle property where that that buyer, I think, reached out, did he reach out, is that right, to our planning and zoning director and made her aware that we had actually approached them a while back and looked into that. The price hasn't changed. We feel that it's overpriced, to be honest, of what they're asking for it. And maybe, Steve, do you mind coming up and just kind of letting us know what that price is? And I know your thoughts were that it was a bit overpriced.
Absolutely. Mayor, Council, thank you for bringing this topic up for discussion. I have had extensive conversations with the property owner, and this has been going on for probably 2 years now, I would imagine, just in terms of the time that I've spent interacting with this individual. The price point that the individual has is $400,000. I don't recall the size of the property. I think it's 0.44 acres, almost a half acre, nearly a half acre. So it's pretty high. It comes out to about $20.87 a square foot. However, it's a consideration, I think, from staff's point of view, that it would be very nice to consider holistically within the park as we look to make improvements there. It's disjointed. You know, it's hard to collectively go in and make improvements when you have this property that's in the middle. The property owner currently has a desire to develop the property in a manner that does not coincide with our zoning classification in the area. So he plans to take the proceeds and do something elsewhere. So that's why the price point stands where it is. I asked if there was any wiggle room with that price, to which there didn't seem to be any at the time being. So I just want to be candid in my discussions with that individual. I let him know that that was going to be a tough one for us, but nonetheless, I felt like it would be worth a discussion just because of I feel its importance to the park as a whole and what it could do for that area in general. I think as we make improvements in Lions Park, it would make a lot of sense if we can include that parcel into our discussions moving forward with Lions.
Okay. That answer. Councilor Williams, did that bring up a thought?
Yes, it did, Mr. Mayor. I clearly misunderstood. I had understood that we own the land, but the building belongs to the homeowner and he leases land from us. That's not accurate.
No, Mayor, Councilor Williams, that is incorrect. So the property is actually owned entirely, that
Okay.
one piece, by that property owner.
All right, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Councilor Allgood?
Well, I would just,
Yeah.
maybe sometime in the near future, we put it on the agenda for some discussion to try to, I like the idea of maybe developing it into some affordable housing or something. But, yeah, we've been discussing it a long time. Maybe we should find a way to move forward on it.
Yeah, no, appreciate that very much. Councilor Denver?
All right, I talked more than I wanted to tonight, but I just want to express my appreciation to everybody who's participating this Friday in the Housing Summit. We have some of our staff, Robin Collins, Stephen Jenkins, Rob McDonald, that is participating in the Housing Summit. We know that housing is a hot topic button in our community. We even deal with those issues here at City Council. And several months ago, our chamber president, Travis Palmer, and myself sat down and thought about a strategy and approach to get local experts together to talk about local housing issues. And I think this will be a good opportunity to kind of figure out what's going on in our community. And so I encourage those that have an interest to attend.
Very good. And take good notes, Councilor Doty and Councilor Dittenberg, right, to come back and report to the council on all the great things you learned. Okay, so a couple of things real quick. Indian Creek Festival, as mentioned, was phenomenal. The fire department didn't lose, don't feel bad, because I lost as well. So I, last year, was able to bring in the C of I offensive line, and we dominated in every aspect. However, they had an away game this year, and so I hope they're not listening, but I got stuck with the freshmen. And they were about half the size of the guys I had last year. So I went flying into the creek. I did sacrifice myself at the front of the rope and got good and wet, and almost had to have the rescue crew come in and get me as I was stumbling out of the water. But it was a great time, a lot of fun, huge crowd down there. We get more and more. It's amazing how many cardboard kayaks are out there, and the decoration that goes into those is just awesome. And people just love it, and it just keeps growing bigger and bigger every year. So it was fun. I know I had a lot of comments from people who loved going down Friday night to listen to the oldies concert going on and the cars that were down there. My son had a football game, so we didn't get to go see the classic cars, which was kind of disappointing since we're kind of restoring one ourselves, but it was phenomenal. Great event, super fun. And then just wanted to touch on URA Commission, just give an update for the new Urban Rural Commission member that we're seeking on that. I was able to talk to Councilor Register since I knew she wouldn't be here this evening, make sure she was aware. So we are still actively pursuing that. The goal is to have a name back to council at the next city council meeting. I'm meeting with an individual tomorrow, and seems like a very highly qualified candidate, so I'll be talking with him, and just, evaluating that, and the goal is to, if it works out, to bring that name back before council at the next city council meeting. So I just want to give you an update that we are actively doing that, and pursuing that to get the best candidate we can to bring to council to move forward with that for urban renewal. So that is all that I had for this evening. So yes, Councilor Stoddard.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to recognize Mr. McDonald and his team on wastewater treatment. You made the papers. I don't know if you knew that or not. You have a very good system, and I had the opportunity to talk to one of the councilmen over in Middleton today. He requested it, and he noticed it too, and he said, whatever you folks are doing, we need to learn from you. So I just want to give you kudos for you and your department in that respect.
Very good. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. So, okay, so with that, we are going to actually ask for a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Doty.
move to convene into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74206, subsection 1F, for the purpose of discussing pending litigation or where there is a general public awareness of probable litigation.
So we have a motion from Councilor Doty and a second from Councilor Stoddard to go into executive session. Madam Clerk, will you please call the, do we have it up? Oh, the TV just got turned off. Okay, so I guess that is open, that is up for voting at this time. And I think one last one, Councilor Stoddard, I don't think, there we go. Okay, all votes I think have been cast, so with that, does pass unanimously. So with that, we'll be moving to executive session. I want to thank everyone for coming this evening. Appreciate your attendance and ask you for your dismissal.